Alrighty, well, let's try this again. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. We are an inclusive, non-creedal fellowship that works for a just community and fosters a lifelong search for personal spiritual fulfillment. Here at UUCLC, we value making a difference in ourselves, our community, and even the world. I'm Janine Reagan, and I'm honored to be your service leader this morning, and I am joined by Reverend Kathy Schmitz, who will be our speaker today. And again, we want to thank Paulette Stewart Johnson for her lovely piano music this morning as we were gathering. It is so wonderful to have live music in our church.
We have a couple dead keys.
A couple dead keys.
Nice
We'll have to resurrect them. Yeah, okay. But first, we have some announcements. So please mute your cell phones while you're here in the sanctuary. Check it, see if it's muted, please. Be sure to check our weekly service bulletin attached to our Sunday email. There are many UU activities and groups that are meeting on Zoom and in the building this week. Now is the time to make a difference by getting involved with some of our committees and some of our groups. We have many very active groups that might meet your needs and your interests. As we progress with reopening, even more opportunities will be available. Some of our committees and groups are again meeting in the church, while others are continuing to meet on Zoom, and some are offering both. So be sure to check the bulletin and the calendar to find out when your groups are meeting and whether it is Zoom or live or combo. If you're interested in receiving our weekly bulletin or learning more about us, please send an email to office@uulakecounty.org. That's our new address. If you are on Zoom, leave your email in the chat box so that we can contact you. For those in the sanctuary, if you're new, be sure to sign in at the podium out here in the narthex so that if you would like a bulletin or newsletter sent to you. Our service is being recorded except for joys and concerns and the discussion period that follows the service. You will find this service and several earlier services on our YouTube channel, UUCLC Office, which you can access also from the weekly bulletin or from our website, uulakecounty.org. The chat box on Zoom is open. You may want to take some time at this point early in the service to enter a joy or a concern, and it will be read during that part of the service. You may also enter a donation today in the funding link, which is also in the chat box. Today, immediately after our service, those attending the Zoom will have a discussion time with Reverend Kathy, who will attend for a little while. And she will then join those of us who were live here today out in the portico for discussion. And I have an important announcement for everyone. After November 21st service with Reverend Libby Moore, which will be next week, all UU CLC Sunday services will be live in the church only. The concurrent Zoom services will be discontinued at that point. We hope that all of you who are able will join us in our lovely church home so that we can all be together again. Committees and groups will continue to have the option of meeting on Zoom. On November 28th, there will be a very special service with Sally Westover presenting Singing Bowls Meditation. This is a very unique experience for anybody that attends. If you've never gone to a Singing Bowls service, this is really a special event, so we hope you're able to attend. The membership committee is again offering an orientation class. This class is open to anyone who would like to learn more about UUCLC or about Unitarian Universalism. The time and date for the first class will be announced as soon as there are enough people on the sign-up sheet. The sign-up sheet is out here just outside the doors on that long table. So be sure that if you're interested that you put your name on the sheet and contact information. And if you have any questions about the orientation class, please contact Julie Twist or Jane Lovejoy. I think Jane's here today. There she is. All right. Does anyone else have an announcement? Okay. Well, welcome to all. If you are a first-time
Diana
visitor
has
or
an
perhaps
announcement.
returning after a long absence, if you are comfortable in doing so, I invite you to stand and tell us who you are, where you came from, and what brought you here today. Do we have any visitors? Yes.
I guess she can't hear.
From Stu Lenihan, I have not been here for a couple of years, and I'm very glad to be back. A variety of things may be possible, but being the way things are, I'm glad to be here.
Welcome back, Jim. It's really good to see you. Oh, we've got somebody over here too.
It's my first time here. My father, Bill,
Ah,
Stevie Streeter.
yes,
member,
very
so
seriously.
Happy to be here for the first time.
Well,
All right.
anybody else? Okay. So now Doug is going to pan the crowd here. He's our camera person. You back up and we're going to show everybody. Yeah, we're going to do the wave. We're going to do the wave.
Okay, let's do that.
We have to do the wave because it's part of being here.
Go team.
Go team, right. So what we're going to do is as he pans the group here, everybody wave at the Zoom people and the Zoom people can wave back at us. Yay.
Good idea.
All right.
Okay. Henry has just told me that there was someone on Zoom who did have an announcement. So we would ask you to please put that into the chat and I will read it at some point here. So let me check chat. I'm not seeing chat. We'll check back on that. Oh, you got it? Wow, I'll tell you, it takes a village. The membership committee will be offering two-part orientation with day and time to be announced. If you're interested and on Zoom, please leave your contact information in the chat. Okay, thank you very much for being my backup. And we always worry about whether all this stuff is going to work, but somebody helps make it work. So we're good. Our opening words this morning come from Andrew Kennedy. We come to love a church. We come to love a church, the traditions, the history, and especially the people associated with it. And through these people, young and old, known and unknown, we reach out, both backward into history and forward into the future, to link together the generations in this imperfect but blessed community, a memory and a hope. And now Don Stearns will come forward to light our chalice. Thank you, Don. May the flame passed to us by those who came before light our way into the future that we together are creating. And remember that you can hum. We are not singing yet, but you can hum with our songs today behind your mask. Each Sunday, we make time for those who wish to offer a joy, a concern, a sorrow, or to set an intention for the coming days. This portion of our service will not be recorded. Please join me in reaffirming who we are by reciting together our congregational covenant found on the screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. It is our practice to give generously to our church as we are able, and keeping in mind that both its meaning in our lives and impact in the world. We are thankful to all who provide financial support for UUCLC. You may donate in the locked box on the table, back there by the doors, by the sanctuary doors. You can also use the link on the chat if you're in Zoom today. And we thank you for your donations.
So anyone who needs to move seats to be able to see around the computer, please feel free to do so. It is great to be back with you once again. And I look forward to chatting with the folks on Zoom for about 10 minutes after the service, and then I'll head outside. So I want to start with a story this morning. A story about me. Today I'm going to talk a lot about me, but I'll tell you why. So I have this scar. It's on my arm. Those of you over 50 and raised in the United States probably have one too. I'm talking about, of course, my scar from my smallpox vaccine. Younger folks don't have them because they didn't get the vaccine. Because why? Because it worked. Children, the smallpox was declared globally eradicated in 1980, and children stopped getting the vaccine in the US in 1972, again, because it worked. Now, when I was 17, I went away to college and I found myself meeting people from other parts of the country. One night, a bunch of us were hanging around and we started, for reasons I don't know, comparing scars like you do. And for example, one person had their vaccine scar on their thigh. I've since learned somebody else had theirs on their ankle. But most of us had them on our arms. We didn't know why. Was it different parts of the country did it different? Was it different doctor preferences? Anyway, during all of this, someone noticed that my scar was more pronounced than everybody else's. So I told the story of why. Most children get vaccinated at age 1. But I was vaccinated at age 6. So mine hadn't faded at 17. Those couple of years made a difference still. I remember sitting in my first grade classroom and the teacher was walking up and down the aisles with her checklist and my classmates were rolling up their sleeve to show the required scar, but I didn't have the required scar and I don't remember being upset about it and I don't remember what was done about it at the time, but I can remember it pretty clearly, so it definitely made an impression. But why didn't I have the scar at age 6? I continued the story to my new college friends. At 1 year old, for reasons I don't know, I couldn't be vaccinated. It was decided that they would vaccinate me instead just before I started first grade when it would be required. It turns out that shortly before I started first grade, I cut my foot rather badly. I was explaining all this to my new friends, and I concluded with confidence, so clearly they couldn't vaccinate me because if they had, the vaccine would have fallen out the hole in my foot. As the words came out of my mouth, I knew there was a problem. I didn't even have to look at the bewildered looks on the faces of my friends. I could so easily picture that understanding that I had carried for over a decade, right? The scab would form because of the way the vaccine was given. It would travel through my body and just drop right out of that hole in the arch of my foot. What the heck was that? Now, I don't know what words were said to me by some trusted adult when I was in first grade, but it formed an understanding and I tucked it away. And it wasn't till all those years later when I heard myself saying it out loud that I knew I was clearly confused about something. I later circled back with my mom and learned that because of the way the vaccine is given, it's contraindicated in cases of skin issues or opened wounds. So that made more sense. But for some dozen years, I knew a thing about myself that wasn't true. So it just goes to show that even when it comes to ourselves, we might not really know everything. It's a reminder to me, when I start being very sure of myself, to hold open my heart and my mind, even about my own experiences. This morning, our meditation has an interactive component. Those in the sanctuary already know that something's up because as they arrived, they were given 5 strips of construction paper. Did anybody not get those? Because Bernie has graciously agreed to hand them out to anybody who didn't get some. Right, I left out my own husband. Good job, Kathy. Oh, okay. So now we've got something for folks at home, but we're going to be reflecting on joy. And I'm going to give you an opportunity, encourage you to let me know what brings you joy. So what the people here in the sanctuary got was 5 strips of paper, like you use to create one of these, right? Do you remember seeing these kinds of things around the holidays, a little paper chain link? So I'm going to invite the folks in a minute in the sanctuary to write something that brings you joy on each slip of paper. Now, folks at home, you're going to have 2 ways to participate, actually 3. One is Val's going to drop a link in the chat that you can click on, and it will take you someplace that you can put in your 5 joys, up to 5 joys. If you only have one really great joy, that's okay too. Also in a minute, Kristen will put up the screen that has it for those who aren't seeing the chat. You can screenshot it and do it later if you want, and we'll also put it in the upcoming newsletter so that people will be able to see it. And you can add joys until the end of the month, to the end of November, and the joys are going to show up in the service in December. So the more joys you share, the better that service will be. Okay, so I encourage you to play along. So let's take a moment to reflect on joy and what brings you joy. So take a moment, if you'd like, to take a deep breath and let it out slowly. Relax if you can. And remember, what brings you joy? What brings you joy? Even if today joy is hard to find, can you remember a time when it wasn't? What does joy look like for you? Or sound like? Or feel like? Or even taste like? What brings you joy? Is it a person or another animal? Is it a place, a thing, an experience or activity, or something else completely? What brings you joy? Is it fleeting, or does it stay with you? Does it surprise you? Or is it something you can find whenever you wish? Joy. What does joy look like for you? Or sound like, or feel like, or even taste or smell like? Let's take just a moment to reflect silently, and as you are moved, you can add your link to our communal chain of joy. I'll invite those in the sanctuary to either leave your joy links right on your chairs when you leave, and I'll gather them up, or we'll put the basket out on the table in the narthex and you can drop them there as you leave the sanctuary. So sometimes, we can take the slide down now, Kristen. Thanks. Thank you so much. And I'll just, before I start the sermon, just add my thanks to Janine and to your whole RAP team and to your tech team who are doing so much to make all of this work. Thank you. Sometimes we know something about ourselves that isn't true. I've been pondering this in light of the Unitarian Universalist first source. Our association lists 6 sources, places from which Unitarian Universalists tend to draw insight and inspiration. We've got a slide that shows you the wording of it. I do believe some poets wrote this language of our sources. The living tradition from which we draws many sources. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Let's read that one more time. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Thank you, Kristen. Our other sources in the list, there are 5 other sources, talk about drawing on the words and deeds of prophetic people, the world's religions, the results of science and the earth itself. We draw on many sources. We might say we have many texts, right? Unlike some religious traditions, we have many texts, many sources, and among them is our own direct experience. Our own experience is a valued source of understanding the world. I get it. And yet, I have heard some people use their own experience in some pretty questionable ways. And I've also heard that there is growing evidence that, for example, eyewitness accounts can be very unreliable. So I decided to do some reading. And it seems that the answer is yes, and, or maybe both and. Like most things in life, a little bit of nuance in our understanding is in order. Of particular interest to me was a 2017 article in Scientific American titled, "Eyewitness Memory is a lot more reliable than you think. What law enforcement and the public need to know." The authors explain that eyewitness accounts can actually be very reliable if they have not been contaminated. Like other evidence, for example, blood and DNA, we have to make sure the evidence is not tampered with. And since memories are very malleable, it's really only that first uncoached testimony that really can be trusted. Additionally, eyewitnesses identifying suspects in a lineup are asked to indicate the degree of certainty that they have in their identification. Studies show that in those cases that are eventually overturned, for example, by DNA evidence, initial eyewitnesses are much more likely to have indicated that they were not certain. Right? Could have been, I don't know, I think it was number 3. In cases where there's a high degree of certainty in those initial lineups, cases are much less likely to be overturned. Now, on the face of this, it seems obvious. But how often do we forget the ways that memories grow and change over time? How it's been influenced by previous experiences or subsequent experiences or the opinions of others, sometimes just by our own trying to make sense of it. These questions are important for justice issues that play in our world today. They're also, you have to figure out, do we use this eyewitness account or not? How reliable is it? But even outside the court system, some reflection on how we understand our own direct experience is in order. So this morning, I'd like to share 3 additional stories from my own life, stories that I might say form the text of my life. Each of these stories from my past is, as I hope you will see, both precious and problematic. So story 1. When I was 5 years old, my family drove from our home in New Hampshire to the New York World's Fair. How many people here went to the New York World's Fair? Okay, all right. Few of us here. Much of what I remember is actually formed by the photos in the family album, right? Not sure I really remember it myself, but there's one experience that really stayed with me and influenced my worldview. I went on the ride, It's a Small World. Now, before you reach for the mute button, I am ethically forbidden from singing in front of other people. So you don't have to worry about getting that song stuck in your head. I know many people find both the song and the ride itself annoying. I also know that there are many valid cultural critiques. But when I was 5 years old, it was magical. Coming as I did from a place with no visible racial or ethnic diversity, I was charmed. This is what the world outside my little town would look like, and all the people would be singing and dancing together. This is what caused me to collect international dolls as a child and to travel as an adult. It helped to form my overly optimistic worldview. In spite of so much evidence to the contrary, I still want to believe that we will all be able to sing and dance together. For nearly 60 years, I have carried inside me this vision of a world, and that vision is wrong. So many diversity trainings later, so much life experience. I know better. It's not that simple. And yet, I know that little age-appropriate visit when I was 5 years old helped to make me who I am today. And here's the thing, I don't have to give up that fond memory. And I don't have to downplay it or try to counter the positive impact that it had on me. I can appreciate it for what it was. And I can grow and learn and know more. So here's a little PSA. I have a friend who knew me before I went to seminary, and she sometimes says to me, "You're talking minister." And I know what she means, but you might not. So I figured that since you're kind enough to show up when I'm speaking in worship, I would offer you a little guidance to understanding minister speak, at least my dialogue. In telling my stories, I'm not suggesting that you should find meaning in them. I'm inviting you to find meaning in your own stories, to examine your own personal texts and see what you might find there. At least that's what I'm trying to do. But over the years, I've encountered at least 3 different responses to my invitations when I share stories. First, there are people who don't really get it at all. They turn to their friend or their partner and say, "Why is she talking about herself so much?" The thing is, I can't tell your stories. I don't know your stories, and even if I did, they wouldn't be mine to tell. There's another group that hears the invitation. They get it. Some will dabble in their own stories and some will not. They will understand that the important part of what I'm sharing is not my story, but ways that they too can explore their own story. And then there's a third group. They hear my words not just an invitation, but a challenge. This will distress some people. They do not need a challenge today, or really they don't ever like them. But hearing a challenge will excite others. These people came to worship today to be stirred up, encouraged, inspired. Think is that all those people are in the room and on Zoom every time we gather. And any one person might feel differently on different days. So that's why I use minister speak and words like, "I invite you." It's a shorthand that usually works. If today was all you could do, all you could do to turn on the computer and find the worship link. Today is a day when you already have enough pain and confusion on your plate and you don't need to go digging for any more. If today you really just wanted to come for community, then I hope that you will understand that invitation to mean that you can do just that. But if you came for challenge today, I hope you hear one in the invitation, a challenge to go deeper and to see what you can find. If you came today to be called to your best self, great. And if something sends your heart and mind down a rabbit hole and you hear not another word until the closing music calls you back, that's good too. An invitation is something that can be declined, considered, or accepted with gusto. My minister speak, as my friend calls it, is my attempt to leave room for you to find what you need and to do what is right for you today. So with that, I offer another story. In that small town in which I grew up, I actually thought I was the diversity, because most of the people that I knew described themselves as either Irish or English or German or Italian, and I was mixed. I had a German last name, but I was also English and Scottish, and according to my mother, Native American. Now, there was no country-specific training attached to any of this. Culturally, I was raised waspy 1950s Euro-American. But I thought I was more interesting because I wasn't just one thing. This made me slow to pick up on some cultural stereotypes because they didn't make sense to me. Given what I knew about myself, how could there be anything wrong with those people? This understanding may have influenced my spiritual life. I'm not really sure, but maybe encouraged my affinity with the natural world. Maybe. And it was all just fine until Ancestry.com and 23andMe came along. Anybody played with that? Yeah, well, good number. So, well, English and Scottish. That would be the accurate telling. There's a little tiny bit of other Northern European, but really British Isles, that's me. No evidence, really no evidence at all of Native American. And I'm a little sad. I even checked the website as I was getting ready for today to make sure they hadn't updated it and found something for me. My biggest disappointment was that I discovered it a few years back just before my mom died, and we had her tested too, and she was not happy with the results. It's one of the few times as an adult that she was ever mad at me. She had lived with this misunderstanding for much longer than I had. And I liked that misunderstanding, wrong though it was. I think it influenced me for the better. And now I have a new story of how I thought I was something and found out I wasn't. And that story can still inform me. In Japan, there's an art called kintsugi. It's the practice of repairing pottery with lacquer that's laced with gold or silver or other substances. The results might look a little like this. Can we get a slide? I think Kristen is going to put up a slide for us. There you go. So there's an artist rendering of one of those. So that bowl had cracked, and around those gold lines are the repair lines. And they're really quite beautiful. Literally, the word means, kintsugi means gold joinery, and thought that it dates back to the 15th century of the Common Era. Thank you, Kristen. The idea is that rather than try to hide the repairs, they're highlighted, and the resulting object is even more beautiful. Philosophically, it reminds us to embrace the imperfect, and to change, and also not to waste. The art has often been practiced with teacups, and the repaired and beautified cups still hold tea. Might the same be true of some of our stories, that when we find they are broken, we can repair them, and the resulting story can still be beautiful and can still hold our history. Individually and collectively, can we not allow our stories to transform and in doing so, make our lives and our world more beautiful? I think of this as I share my last story, the story of Thanksgiving. As a child, every year we literally went over the river and through the woods to my grandma's house. There were no horses or sleighs involved, but it had all the other markings of a stereotypical Thanksgiving holiday, and my memories of it are fond. In recent years, the calls to reconsider our mythology around Thanksgiving have been gaining more and more attention. For decades, some Native Americans have protested and reminded us that that relationship between the arriving Europeans and the people who already inhabited this land were complex and often heartbreaking. My purpose this morning is not to explore that topic. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, though, I do invite you to look for opportunities to become better informed. My reason for bringing it up this morning is that in spite of everything I've learned about the Thanksgiving holiday and its mythology, I still plan to celebrate Thanksgiving. I will be with family and I will be grateful. And I will likely learn more about the atrocities, the early atrocities from my grandchildren who are growing up with much more awareness than I ever had of the tragedies of colonialism. We will not decorate with pilgrims. We will not intentionally perpetuate stereotypes or inaccurate mythology. But in the world today, I am not willing to give up a well-established day focused on gratitude. I would rather that it be broken and repaired and made more beautiful. At the moment, my preferred symbol for Thanksgiving is the cornucopia, or corn of plenty. It reminds me of the bounty that I have in my own life. And it helps to remind me of my commitment to create a world where all share in that bounty. These are stories in my life that are both precious and problematic. So how about you? What stories do you have that might be both precious and problematic? Personally, in your family, as a congregation, in our nation, in our world. Our First Unitarian Universalist Association source honors direct experience. Your experience matters. And like all other texts, religious or otherwise, we have the opportunity to read them again and again, and to find deeper meaning and more authentic understanding. The choices we make in the present about how we understand our past will help us create the history of tomorrow. How we understand our past influences our future. The stories in my life have more meaning because they have been broken and mended. I will not give any up. They were the truth of my past and they helped to form me. I will understand them differently. Now, as a caution, I won't be rewriting anybody else's stories for them, especially not uninvited. That will require their own attention and artistry. We can accompany one another, but we cannot do each other's work. But together in community, we have the opportunity to create a more beautiful world, a world that holds our history and our evolving truth, all at the same time. May it be so.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing. Oh Lord, you got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you got to dance. Oh Lord, you got to dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you gotta shout. Oh Lord, you gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
You're up, Janine.
Now, we'd like to just check the chat for any other messages. There's a link, excuse me. There's a link to let Kathy know what brings you joy and will be used when she's here next month. That's our only chat message right now. So now we'll have Don come up and extinguish our chalice.
Little oxygen left in there.
Thank you, Don. Inspired by Our Ancestors by Leah Derlin Jones. A line of framed family photos, all on a surface, some out of focus. For those who came before us, we offer gratitude and thanks. May their memories be a blessing. May we feel surrounded by their love. As we go forth from this time and place, let us be inspired by our courage, their wisdom, and their dreams. Let us honor them by doing the work of living boldly, loving mightily, and creating heaven on earth. Amen and blessed be.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. Yes, we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. We seek an honest answer to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and healthy peace of mind. And then we come together here to talk of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. Yes, we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that learning is an answer. Yes, we believe in life and in the strength of love. Yes, we have found